Before I get into explaining the new tower, I'm going to explain how the old builds work and their limitations. So basically, a few months ago, I discovered this setup here where Endermen think they can walk on top of this trapdoor even when it's open. And they think this is an open door because you place it sideways and then open it. So they think they can walk through here, but instead, obviously, they fall in the hole. So if you stand above this block here, they're all going to pass directly into that hole. Now this setup here is a tweak that Matthew Bolin made to my original design that makes it a little simpler to build. But the issues here, the biggest issue is that you can only aggro Enderman from 6 blocks up in 1.8. Because of that, you have to build essentially on the lowest block in the area, which limits where you can build a lot and sometimes makes you pick bad spots. Also, dying with this tower is slow. You have to essentially fall all the way down this hole, which takes about 2 seconds every single cycle. So that costs you upwards of 30 seconds per night. And the last issue is that when Endermen are pathfinding to you, they have to go downhill. They have to go down these blocks. But when that happens, they think they're getting further away from you because you're up high. So they sort of get confused and start like running in circles, basically. And eventually they do finish getting to you, but that slows down the tower a lot. My latest tower design is called the Zen Tower, and it pretty much fixes all of these issues. So how exactly does it work? Well, you stand on this slab here, look around, aggro Enderman, and like in the old ones, they'll fall right in that hole. And then as the Endermen get close to the tower, you jump in this lava here, and you can time your death so that you die quickly. So how does this fix the issues with the old towers? Well, you're at ground level here. You don't have to be off the ground, so you don't have to worry about building on low ground. Because of the Enderman height limit, you can pretty much build it anywhere without worrying about that. The death is much faster because you can time it with the lava so that as the Endermen are dying, the respawn button shows up and you go back to the top, which is optimal. And because you're at ground level, there's no issues with Endermen getting confused while pathfinding to you. They pretty much just run in a straight line. The biggest problem with this setup is cycles where there aren't any Endermen. Because in those, you have to jump down, look around, and then take the full 2.5 seconds to die to the lava, another second to respawn. You're losing 4 to 5 seconds on those compared to if you could instantly die. My solution to that is a modification of an old trick called Where's Waldo, where essentially while you're falling, you look for Endermen. If you don't see any, you sprint forward and die. If you do see them, you catch the ladder. The problem with this trick is that it's really hard in real time to look for Endermen. So what we do instead is we pause on the way down, look for Endermen, and there are some tricks you can do to make this way easier. You set your GUI scale to small, your FOV to Quake Pro. You can see pretty much everything. And you see there's an Enderman there, so I'm going to take this cycle, aggro that Enderman, and then I can look around for more while I'm down here, and die, and repeat the process. If you don't like abusing pauses, I understand. I actually think all pauses should be counted in your time. But as long as they're allowed, I'm going to be abusing them. If you don't want to, there's a couple other alternatives you have. You can try to do the version where you just spot Enderman as you're falling. That's very difficult. I tried it a few times before I came up with the pausing trick. I was missing a lot of Endermen. Or you can just take every cycle and then accept the 4 or 5 second time loss every time there aren't any Endermen. If you do that, you're going to have to get a lot luckier with spawns, so that only happens a couple times, but it is still possible. There's a lot of little things that have a massive impact on how good this tower is, and one of those is where you build it. The key thing in figuring out where to build it is trying to maximize your line of sight, so making sure you can see as many Endermen as possible. Obviously, the best case for that is a perfectly flat desert, but if you can't do that, then you should prefer the top of a hill rather than the bottom of a hill. So if you're at the bottom of a hill and then there's an uphill and a downhill behind it, you're not going to be able to see the Enderman in this area, for example, whereas on top of a hill, your line of sight is much better. One important part of this tower is being able to bait skeletons into the hole, because getting arrows from it is massive. Now, if you see here, I have my hitboxes on, and that red line there is my eye line. And basically, mob aggroing is controlled by whether they have line of sight with you. So they're going to aggro on you if they have line of sight. In case of skeletons, they're going to shoot at you if they have line of sight. So it just so happens that the height of the slabs is enough that when you're standing upright, skeletons can see you. When you're crouching, your eye line lowers by just a little bit, and they can't see you anymore. So we can take advantage of this to bait as many skeletons into the hole as possible. So here, if I go into survival and immediately crouch, you'll see they pretty much just ignore me, which is not good. If I stand up, they're going to see me, or at least some of them should see me. Oh, well, now it's daytime. And they're going to shoot at me because they can see me. What we can do instead is stand up so that they aggro, and then crouch so that they can't see anymore, but they are still aggro on you, and then they'll go into that hole. So if I can get more of these aggro on me by jumping, and then I crouch so they can't see me, they're all going to path into the hole. And this is something you can just do while the Endermen are coming towards you. Should start every cycle standing up. And then once you get shot, start crouching, because then you know the skeleton is aggro on you, and it'll path right in there. And you should get a ton of arrows at the end of the night. I've been getting 20 to 25. Adding this lava reduces it by a little bit because some of the spawning spaces near you are lit up. But you still get a good amount of skeletons every night, more than any other tower. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the most important time saves in this tower is timing your death correctly. And the key thing to understand here is that Endermen take 1.8 seconds, plus or minus about a tenth of a second, to fall 44 blocks. If you hit respawn before they reach the bottom, then they're going to despawn instead of dying. There are two ways that you can time your death well. The first is with lava timing, or with timing your entrance into the lava. And the trick here is that you want to take your third tick of lava damage as the Enderman is falling, because that way you have 2 more ticks of damage to take. You get one of those every half second. It's going to take a second for you to die, and then it takes a second for the respawn button to appear. So you'll be respawning pretty much exactly as the Enderman finishes falling. You do have some leeway here. If you take more than 2 ticks of lava damage before the Enderman falls, you can just wait before hitting the respawn button. You obviously don't want to die before the Enderman falls, because then it will stop pathfinding since you're not there anymore. But you can take between 2 and 4 ticks of lava damage and still be optimal. The other trick, and this is something that Sichi came up with, is that you can shift off the edge of the slab towards the door to take damage. And I'll show you what I mean right here. So you aggro the Enderman, you shift this way, and then they're going to hit you through the door as they're going. And that's a way that you can take damage before having to die. I took too much damage there, obviously. But then you don't have to time your death as precisely because you'll be on lower health, so you can just go into the lava once they start falling. The downside of this is that you're going to be on a different amount of health every time. So you have to sort of figure out each cycle how long you have to wait before respawning. You can do this pretty easily just by waiting for the Enderman to fall, and then immediately when the Enderman falls, you get in the lava, take the rest of whatever health you have left, and count 2 seconds from when the Enderman starts falling to when you hit respawn. So sometimes that'll be right when the respawn button pops up. Sometimes you'll have to wait before respawning, but the key is 2 seconds after they fall. We use pausing in this tower, obviously, to decide whether or not to take the cycles, but you can actually do more than just that with your pauses. So if I can get a group of Endermen here, I'll show you what I mean. But if you pause for longer, here we go. So when I pause, I don't just decide that I'm going to take the cycle. I look for all the Endermen. So here I know there's 4, and I decide the order I'm going to aggro them in. And I always go from furthest to closest so that while the far ones are pathfinding, I aggro the other ones. So here I know I have to look exactly at that angle, aggro this one, and then these two. That's going to make me much more efficient when I actually get down there, rather than if I had to look around and find all of the Endermen past the one I saw. So how do you actually build this? Well, the fastest I've been able to do it was 2 minutes and 2 seconds with gold tools, and I'll link that in the description. Realistically, you should probably be shooting for around 2.5 minutes in runs. I'm going to start by digging out this L shape here. Place slabs there and there. These can be any solid blocks. I think nether brick slabs are best since you'll be mining out the spawner anyway. Put a trapdoor there, open it, a door there, then you shift, put a slab there, 2 slabs this way, trapdoor there, chest against there, another slab here, 3 slabs there, a slab there. Dig this block on the other side of the door from this one, and you want to jump up here, break that. You're putting your lava here under the trapdoor, and then another slab there. Then you want to go up 2 blocks here, place a solid block here, or double slab if that's how you're building it, a ladder there, and then another slab against the side of this ladder. And that'll go there, which is the one you have on top of you to prevent you from getting knocked out. Then you can break these leaves either now or later when you're running the tower. You tower up, obviously, 128 blocks, place your bed up there. I won't show you that for now, but the key thing is I strongly recommend using single ladder here. The reason for that is that you have to actually slide down the ladders because of these blocks here. And these blocks have to be here so that you can do the Where's Waldo trick effectively and to prevent you from getting down. So you can't just catch any ladder and then jump off. You have to actually slide all the way down. So if you have 3 ladders, it's going to lose you a second every cycle just sliding down the ladders. The downside, obviously, is that you have to build to a precise height. And the height that works for your ledge is 113 off the ground. So you can see the ground Y level here is 64. So what you would do is go up to that plus 112, so 176. We'll just pretend 66 is 176. Then you place your solid block and then your ladder on the side of that. So when you're standing on top of the ladder, on top of the block with the ladder, your Y level should be 113 above ground level. If you don't use F3, get good at counting, I guess. But yeah, you want to build to precise height. And when you're digging down, as you're falling, get your pickaxes and your boat in your hotbar. You're going to want to, again, remember the Y level of the surface, 64. Start by going 43 below that. So we're going to dig down to 21. And then we're going to set up the way we get out of the tower, which is a trick that, actually, I'll explain the exit after we finish the build. But the exit was all developed pretty much by SharkyMan20. We dig down to 21. Then we dig out 2 blocks forward, too high. Then we want to dig a 3x3 area at head level out. Make sure you pick up all the blocks here. You fill in these 2 blocks and place a boat in the middle here. Then dig down 1 more block. And this part's going to go by quick, but you get in the boat, drive forward until you're on about half health, then get out of the boat, open your inventory, and throw out all your items. And then what we just did there is an item elevator. So basically, yeah, you can see all the stuff floats to the surface. The trick is essentially when blocks are inside solid blocks, and all the blocks around it are also solid, they just go up. So when we get out of the boat, we are in the block above us. When we throw the items are in the block above us, so they just go up. Um, if I would recommend for most people that you drop all your items in the chest before you go down. You don't technically have to. You can just throw all your items on the surface. Like go in the boat, throw all your items on out, and then let them all stay on the surface, since the tower split should be under 5 minutes. But if you want to play it safer, what you can do instead is when you get down here, you throw out anything important here, so that whenever you're falling, you're going to pick it up again. So I would throw out like shears. You should get rid of most of it in the chest, but then you would throw out your pick and your shovel here since you want to keep them, then get in the boat and throw the rest of your items on the surface that you don't care that much about. You don't want to be throwing tools on the surface because then mobs will pick them up and you have to take time killing them. So even if you do go chestless, you should throw out your tools on the floor at the bottom. Now, in terms of checking pearls and exiting the tower, when you want to check your pearls, you should do it on a cycle where you're killing Endermen. So you aggro all the Endermen. They all fell. You open the door, drop down, and look really closely at your hotbar, basically. So I'll do an example. You're going to want to remember which slot the pearls are in. So I'll put a bunch of other crap down here to confuse it. I'll die. In reality, you're not going to know the first time you fall where the pearls are, so you might have to take 2 falls. Here, they're going to be in the 7th slot because that's where they were when I died. If you look really closely, you can tell the number just before you die. If that's hard for you, you can also try pause buffering right above the bottom. So there I timed the pause right so I can see the number. If you're too early, you can quickly pause and unpause. I actually got another pause in while the number is still there. So just another way to abuse pauses. When you want to exit your tower, we use a cool trick involving damage immunity. So basically, you pick up your bed when you want to leave the tower. I'll go up just to demonstrate. You're gonna, on the last cycle before you leave the tower, you set your render distance to 2. And then you would die, go up. I'll just fly up since I don't have a bed up there. And then you're going to take the bed, drop down, and then replace the bed in a particular spot. And I'll show you that in just a second. That should be high enough. If you fall, catch the ladder. You want to put your bed right here. Sleep again to set your spawn. Demonstrate this part in survival. Fall, you're going to die, and then when you respawn, immediately sprint forward into the hole. You have respawn immunity, so you won't die. Then you get in the boat, throw all your stuff to the surface, or just the important stuff you don't care about, rotten flesh. And again, it'll get elevated to the surface. You may want to pick up the lava before you do that. I know the boat was on that side, so it wasn't an issue. But if you're not sure which side you put it on, you can do that. Now, there is some risk with this item elevator, because if there's a cave, if there were a cave anywhere under this area, the items are going to get stuck in there. So when you're digging down, you want to listen really closely for caves, and if you dig on caves, you want to remember which directions they're in. And then you want to make sure to build the boat elevator not in that direction. If there's caves all around you, you may want to just abandon the boat elevator and take the time loss of pillaring out with all the items. But that does cost you about 20 seconds, so it's much better if you can use the boat elevator. That's pretty much all there is to this tower, but I do want to talk about some of the routing that this tower enables in terms of the rest of the run. The first thing is that in 1.8, blazes are a lot easier. And now because you get arrows from this tower, you don't really need to grind gravel during the blaze fight. So that allows us to blaze bed, which if you've watched any 116, I'm sure you've seen, but pretty much it clears out the spawner and virtually guarantees 4 blazes to spawn every time the spawner does a cycle, as opposed to, I think the average is around 2.5 if you have an unmodified spawner. Don't quote me on that. That could be completely wrong. But basically, this cuts a minute, an entire minute off your blaze split on average. And because we're in 1.8 and we don't have to grind gravel, it's not like 1.7 where blaze bedding is essentially a death sentence. Cutting a minute off your blaze split is massive because we actually have things we can do with the extra time since the tower takes longer to build, but also because in some cases we'll be able to divine travel. If you've been following the speedrun community at all recently, you've probably heard about that in 116. But there's also some divine travel for 1.8. And if you haven't watched Matthew Boland's video on divine travel, I absolutely recommend that. But if our first nether portal spawns in a flat area essentially, and then we identify where the start of the fortress is, we can figure out the quadrant and which eighth of the distance the stronghold is in. Because the ring is pretty small in pre 1.9, that actually gives us a 10% chance of randomly digging on the stronghold. So while the category probably isn't quite at the point where this is something you should be resetting for, if you get a quick nether exit, you can go to the area where divine travel tells you to go and build your tower there, and you have about a 10% chance of digging on the stronghold, which entirely cuts out the need for triangulation and for digging down a second time to the stronghold. There's also another route that I've developed with Sharpie 20, Sichi, and Silver, and this is called dig down route, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. You dig down basically immediately off spawn, get 4 logs, craft a wood pick and a boat, then get 4 stone, dig straight down for it, make a pickaxe and a shovel, and then you're going to dig down 45 blocks and hope you hit iron. If you don't hit iron, it's a reset. And this should pretty much only be done on seeds where you have sheep and a lava pool. So you have a guaranteed nether entry with food and wool, but you don't have a cave. And it lets you play out those really good seeds where you have everything at spawn. And then you're going to reuse this hole later for your tower. So it's not actually a time loss digging down. And here we go, we hit iron. When you get 43 blocks down, you're going to do the same boat setup we had for the tower. So let's set that up here. Then you're going to die, elevate all your items to the surface. There's even more iron. You only really need 6 iron with this route. You can get 8 if you want an iron sword, since you probably will be blaze bedding. So there's 7, 8. Make sure to fill in those blocks because otherwise the item elevator won't work. And this block too. We put our boat, get in, drive forward, get out of the boat, throw everything to the surface. And now when we respawn, everything should float up. And we have our iron, we have a bunch of cobble. You can actually then use cobblestone slabs to build your tower, cobble and nether brick slabs and some oak if you want, or you can just go with the classic leaves. Now you pretty much, you make your furnace, start cooking your iron. This is a super flat world, so I don't have any trees, but then you would go pretty much continue your overworld split as normal. That's it for this video. If you've got any questions or ideas, let me know in the comments.